Hi, this is Amy Smaller, CEO Strategic Market Insight. The purpose of this video is to give you an overview and reminder of what we did in the previous workshop session that was actually back in January in 2015, which was the longer version of engaging in meaningful ways to communicate to be heard. The goal of today is a shorter piece, but it's here for you to review, watch, listen to as need be. The other piece I've added is a checklist that is beneficial or could be beneficial to you to use to either prepare for your meetings and or to debrief when your meetings are over. So for this video, the purpose is to remind everyone why we're here in the first place. Then to go over questions to ask. And these are questions you can ask to your customer or client in preparation for going in for that meeting or engagement, whether it be a face-to-face discussion, a WebEx, a telephone call, workshop, seminar, all of the above. They apply in order to prepare and do your homework. Numbers 3 and 4, which are the storyline and points of resistance, are related. If you recall back in January, with the storyline, it's a way of conveying your data and your message, but also grounding in the points of resistance or place of where your customer or client may be at that point in time. So it's a combination of recognizing why people either may be hesitant or say no, but also be able to bring in your information to help them get from the no to the yes, or from the not so sure to yes, I'll think about it, to move along. The way we communicate is changing and has been changing. We're no longer data pushers. The data can't speak for themselves. We really need to engage with customers as people. Now, while this isn't rocket science or anything that's new to understand, it's a challenge with the day in and day out grind that we have to remember that our clients are actually our people, and to be able to relate to them as human beings and putting ourselves in their shoes. For the questions to ask, there's really 4 buckets that I like to put the questions in. The first 2 buckets are, what do your customers need to do their job, and what influences your customers' behavior? Now, the first one is specific to their particular role in an organization, whether it be a hospital or insurance company or physician group, ECO, what have you. Everyone has goals or benchmarks that they're held accountable for. So while they may love the idea that you have, if it doesn't directly relate to them or they can't make a connection to how it can be beneficial to them, oftentimes there's a challenge in being willing to be your champion and take it on. So before you go into that meeting, what is their position? What are they held accountable for? What types of data do they make internal arguments with? Some groups need to have randomized controlled clinical trials. Other groups say, hey, we'll take observational data. Some of them even say, well, what did your ad board say? Right? So it depends, and it's knowing what those questions might be with the data. The other piece too is understanding the market landscape. How do they look at the market? What is their position in the market? And that also probably most likely relates to guidelines and recommendations as to what they're held accountable for. So they're all related questions in that group, but each one is important. The second group of influencing your customer's behavior, if your relationship is stronger and you're transparent, chances are you have a good relationship and they're open to hearing what you have to say. But aside from that, are there, as mentioned in the previous question, are there certain types of studies or data that resonate with them? Are there certain types of data that will have more of an influence on their decision making? And also, another example is, what are their pressures to contain costs? Is it directly medical costs? Is it also pharmacy costs? Knowing what those are really helpful. The other 2 buckets of questions are what your customers value and what influences their priorities. So the value is very specific to the individual, and on a personal level, what is their value set? The customer's priorities, those are related to the other 3 questions, for better or for worse, but it's really figuring out their top 3 priorities that year. Is it obviously bending the price curve is something that's on everyone's mind, but managing costs, how high of a priority is that? The safe products, ensuring staff understands product profile, levels of satisfaction, all of those can play into it, but you need to think about and or ask your customer what will influence them. Most important, and this can't be stressed enough, listening with the intent to understand. People know if you're not paying attention. They can feel that you're just asking and waiting to respond, and not taking in what they're saying. So the goal of those 4 levels of questions and those sub-questions, for instance, those are things you can ask, and if you really listen and put preconceived notions aside, your interaction or engagement will be much better. The storyline, which we saw back in January, you start out with what is, what's grounding, what's the current situation. The middle part, you have what I like to call the cadence, where you take up to what could be, which is what your data may be presenting. You come back to the what is. Then you have an opening for, well, here's what could be, coming back to what is. One of the favorite parts I like of this particular picture is if you look at the end, you'll notice that you're leaving your customer or client higher than where you started. And part of that has to do with the call to action that's there as well. So whether it be having them answer a question, getting a second meeting, getting a drug approved, agreeing to participate in a study. It can be small or it can be big, but you should leave them with some sort of call to action. And why they don't engage, there's 6 buckets around their reasons for not engaging. All of the comfort zone, the fear, and the vulnerabilities, those are ones that are there and definitely present. But what I've been finding more and more in the past year or two, it's the misunderstanding of a message or of data or of how to interpret results. There are obstacles, whether they be internal or external, that are coming in their way, and sometimes they're not sure how to vocalize what those obstacles are, but they're there. The third one is politics. We all know it exists, and some of your customers or clients may not be in the position to make the final decision. However, they may have the trust and respect of someone who does. So it's understanding, again, that customers or clients' position, where they are in the organization, and what they can do to help you and be their champion. So it's figuring out what information they need to be successful. Now, one of the things that I would like to share with you that I didn't share with you at the workshop, which is something new, is the Communicate and Be Heard checklist. It's very simple, 1 page, but as I like to say, and people have told me it's deceivingly simple, but it's worthwhile to go through the process. The other thing I recommend is working with fellow colleagues on answering these questions and or comparing notes, because you'll learn from each other and bring each other up. So the questions, have you reached out to your customer in the past 6 months? Simple yes or no, and it'll make a thought process of, yes, I have, no problem, or if you haven't, it'll jog maybe why you haven't. What was your level of preparation for your meeting? Did you prepare a little bit? None at all, because you were just sort of chatting on the phone, or were you really prepared for that meeting? The next part is what I like to call the meat of the checklist, which are 5 questions that you need to answer. Number 1, what does your customer value or prioritize? Number 2, what are the top 3 challenges your customer is facing this year? Number 3, what is your goal of the meeting? I didn't go over this piece in the review, but if you recall, as we talked in January, you have a mapping, you have a destination of where you want your client or customer to be. And also you need to be ensuring that the content you're providing in that particular discussion or engagement is leading them to that destination. However, you need to know your goal of the meeting before you go in, so you know where to lead them. Number 4, what are your customers' potential points of resistance? Out of those 6 buckets, think. Is it number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, or number 6? And if you don't like to write it down, at least thinking about what they might be is helpful. And number 5, what can you do to diminish their points of resistance and achieve your goal? And that part really is related to number 3, and also related to the mapping out of where you want to leave them at the end of that conversation. So with that, I would like to thank you for your time. I hope this has been helpful and that you can go out, communicate and be heard, and engage with your clients and customers in meaningful ways. Thank you.